So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. A very warm welcome, talofa lava, malualele. Absolutely wonderful to have you all with us for this really exciting session. This is day 3 of the Connected Educator Month launch week. And we've got a really special session today, and you can see on my left and below me and towards my right, we have got 3 wonderful guests here from NZCER who have kindly agreed not only to appear in this webinar today, but also to support a book group that's one of our first book group that's going to run through the next 3 weeks of Connected Educator Month, and then we'll also have a second session to bookend. You see what I did there? To bookend this book group as part of Connected Educator, and we'll go through all of the details of that in a moment. But it's just fantastic that you could all join us today. My name is Karen Malure-Spencer, and I'm facilitating, hosting this session with Sally, Sue, and Rachel. So just a little bit of housekeeping for this session, particularly for those of you for whom this might be the first online webinar or workshop that you might have done before. Just a little bit of advice. You can see at the top of your screen that you will have some icons, and one of them is a microphone. Little green microphone. Could you please make sure that it is set to mute? Otherwise we get to hear what you're doing wherever you're sitting. Those of you like Bern and Dee who are coming in on mobile devices, I don't think you can set them to mute. I think it's either on or off if it's on an iPad or an iPhone or a Chrome device. So sure that microphones are off, otherwise we get funny echoes. There is a little icon towards the top of your screen that has a little person with their hand up. You can use that button to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question and grab the microphone. You can also use it to show applause. I'm sure there'll be loads of that. Smiley faces. So that button there is to send an indication to the room if you want to. The chat box, which is down below underneath Sue and Rachel and myself and Sally. You can see already that people have been typing in there. You just type a comment in the empty box at the bottom and press return. So you can use that to ask questions, share thoughts and comments like a back channel during the session. Equally, if you just want to sit back and let it just wash over you for the next hour, if it all gets a little bit busy and hectic, that's absolutely fine too. All of these sessions are recorded and become publicly available as part of our archives straight after this session as well, for a little bit of rewindable learning or to share it with people who couldn't make the session today. We've also got key points being tweeted out right through the session. That's Tanya Coots, but also there'll be other people, I'm sure, in the room who can multitask quite happily, who will be live tweeting as we go through as well. We have got a whole series of ways that you can show evidence of professional learning through Connected Educator Month, through a digital badging scheme, He Tohu o Ronga, and there's a page on the website that you can go to. I'll have to grab the link in a second unless someone else is very, very quick and can grab me the link. It's under Participate on the Connected Educator website. But there are digital badges for presenting, blogging, reflecting, mentoring, so do check those out. It would be fantastic if you could take a few minutes at the end to complete our evaluation form. The link to that is right down at the bottom on the right-hand side of the screen under web links. And as always, we invite you to sign up for the newsletters that we'll be sending out during the month. Just go to the Connected Educator website and stay in touch with us all month. So to settle us in, we'll start with our karakia, and just greetings to all of you who have just joined us today. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana. Hei hurahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātu ia tātu katoa. Huie tai kie. Welcome all of you as we settle in for the first book group of Connected Educator Month. Now, the slide that you're looking at here is a screenshot from the global book group community. Now, this has been set up by a team over in the States, and the book that we're going to launch today is one of about, I think it's 10 or 12 book groups that are being run right around the world this October as part of Connected Educator Book Group to celebrate the way that we can digitally come together and engage in deep reflection around a number of different books. So the book from NZCER features in that book group, and the link is there for you. But there's also books being offered, including the Connected Educator as well, right through the month as on that digital forum. So that's a global book group, and that's kicked off this week as well. I have advanced. I'm just going to double check. I have advanced the slide. I just want to double check. I'm just going to move the slides. I've just moved the slide there. Can you all, no change? Just no advancing there. That's very strange. Just hold on 2 seconds, because without the slides, can you do it yourselves? I had to press play to flip it. Okay, hold on a minute. Ah, right, now. Okay, how's that? Oh, the syncing button. That's the thing I needed to press. So, that global book group, you didn't really know what I was talking about. There's the screenshot of it there. There's the URL at the top. So that's the global book group, and the NZCER book features in there, as well as about 10 others across a number of different countries, particularly in the States as well. So if you've got nothing else to do this October and you just want to read and immerse yourself in edu-nerdery and book group geekery, then there's the place to do it. But today our focus is all on a homegrown publication, which I think has come out at a really pertinent time for schools right across New Zealand. The book group that we're launching today kicks off with this webinar, and then it continues to roll right through until the 23rd of October in the Virtual Learning Network, in discussion threads there, and the link to that is down in the bottom right corner of your screen under web links. And then on October the 23rd, 3:45 after school, you're very welcome to come back, having explored and taken part in those discussions for the next 3 weeks. Come back and join us in this room to wrap up and share some of the stories and ideas that you will have been mulling over during the month. And in a moment, I'm going to formally hand over to Sue, Sally, and Rachel. It's apologies from Rose. She was fully intending to join us today. I understand that she's not particularly well, but she's with us in spirit, I'm sure. And before we start, I'd like to here's a confession. I've got my book here. You can see a couple of little tabs that I've got marked here. I went on holiday to the UK in July, and this, I don't know what it says about me really, this was my chosen reading for the first leg of the flight over to the UK. Incredibly readable, really quick read. I had time to eat my lunch on a tray and watch a movie as well. Really quick read, very readable. And you will have seen, many of you, no doubt, discussions online, presentations at conferences around 21st century learning, future-focused learning, and there are all kinds of resources online where practitioners like ourselves are reaching into this rather nebulous space around what future-focused learning might look like. I know the ministry has started to run a series of small symposia trying to get a handle on what future-focused thinking and learning might look like. There's certainly a line in the book that future-oriented learning isn't out there waiting to be discovered and put into practice. It's actually a set of pedagogical concepts that we are going to have to make real for ourselves. And the book, Key Competencies for the Future, puts forward a set of ideas and arguments about where we might start in this rather unformed space. And I'd like to congratulate Rose and Rachel, Sally and Sue for marshalling thinking and stories and ideas at a time when schools are really looking for fresh thinking around how they might reimagine the New Zealand curriculum and rethink pedagogies that really tap into what we now know about how young people learn. So an incredibly timely publication, and I'm excited to have you all here today. So what I'm going to do now, and I know that Sally and Sue and Rachel have decided the order in which that they're going to speak, and you can also advance the slides yourselves with the arrows down at the bottom. So I'm going to hand over now. I just want to confirm, I can't remember actually who's kicking off, so raise your hand. It is Rachel, fantastic. So I'd like to hand over to Rachel. We have a shared interest in learning how to do handstands. I just thought I'd share that as part of the recording here. And hand over to Rachel to kickstart this session for us this morning. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Karen, and kia ora to everyone. And I do want to again send apologies from Rose. She's at home today resting up. She picked up a bug from her granddaughters, and she was going to initiate our conversation today, so I'll step in and try and fill her shoes. And hi, Rose, if you're watching. So the photo that you see on the screen was taken of the four of us at the book launch, and that was just 5 months ago in May. And one of the things that we talked about at the book launch was this process of 4 people writing a book together that had one narrative voice. And we were really clear throughout writing the book that we didn't want to write an edited book of disparate chapters. We really wanted to write something together, and so the process of doing that involved many, many hours of us meeting around a round table, piecing our ideas together and picking them apart. And the book that came out of that process therefore reflects each of our individual ideas and value and knowledge, but it also is a really good representation of the collective knowledge that we've developed as a team. And that knowledge has been informed by our work on many different research projects looking at different ideas and aspects about key competencies and their expression in practice. And of course, that's brought us into relationship with many other researchers, including our other colleagues at NZCER and researchers in other parts of New Zealand, as well as numerous school leaders and teachers and students, and some of their stories appear in the book. So the book, we feel it's really a little bit like a conversation between the 4 of us as the co-authors, but we also really wanted it to feel like a conversation with our readers as well. And that's always a tricky one because you don't necessarily know who your readers will be and what they will take from the book. But we talked about this constantly, who we hoped would read it and what we thought they might gain from it. We really wanted the book to be accessible and interesting to teachers, but not just to teachers. We thought it was important to have a book out there that a wide range of people who are interested in having these kind of conversations about key competencies, but even more broadly than that, about learning in the future. So at the book launch, we said that the proof of how successful we've been would be in what happens next once we put the book out there. And we were able to extend that conversation and actually literally engage in a conversation with our readers around these ideas. So being part of this book group is really exciting for us, and it's part of that hope that we've had that the book would be the source of or the starter for many more interesting conversations and opportunities to hear about practices that are developing around New Zealand. So we've also been, I guess stalking is probably the wrong word, but we've been lurking in Twitter and other places online to read what other people have said and thought about ideas in the book and how they are starting to explore some of these ideas in practice. So really hopeful that we're going to hear more of that through this month. So we sometimes have used this iceberg metaphor to think about what it means to dig deeper into the key competencies. And the iceberg metaphor, I mean, we see it all over the place now, but sometimes it's really easy to sort of stay at the surface level and stick with the familiar and what we think we already know about an idea, like any one of the key competencies. So this is Rose's slide. So the details that she's added in that below the surface part of the iceberg show some of where our own thinking journey has taken us in relation to key competencies. And I'd say the book sits right in the bottom part of that iceberg. But there have been other projects that also dip below the surface. For example, the Key Competencies and Effective Pedagogy project, I think, Sue, you worked on that with Rose, identified challenges, connections, and initiative as characteristic of learning designed to stretch students' competencies. And Rose is working on the learning to learn link at the moment, and she says she hopes to have some new ideas out soon. So watch this space. So each of the projects and pieces of work that we've done over the years has given us a way to dig deeper and revisit what we think we know and what we think we understand about key competencies. And it's almost like an endless journey of discovery of new facets and dimensions and nuances to these ideas. So I wonder where all of you see yourselves in relation to the iceberg. Do you feel like you're still on the tip, or have you been starting to drill down into the depths? Well, we really hope that the book and the conversations that we'll be able to have with you over this month will help you to be able to find a way into some of those deeper dimensions. And by the way, we do talk a little bit about the origins of the key competencies and how it is that they found their way into our New Zealand curriculum in the very first chapter of the book. So that's a really good starting point. So we put it at the front of the book. So we've just picked out 3 big ideas to focus on in this book group. And so each of us is going to talk a little bit about these ideas. Whoops, I was going to skip that slide. And we're hoping that we'll be able to explore and discuss these with you on the online forums over the next few weeks. So the first idea is, again, starting deep at the bottom of the iceberg to carry on this previous metaphor. And maybe it actually calls on us not just to focus on the iceberg, but on the deep ocean waters that sit around it. And to carry the metaphor even further, perhaps it calls on us to notice that the waters are beginning to warm, and that this warming is causing the iceberg to melt. And maybe it calls on us to ask some hard questions about what we think we're going to do about that. So this is a particular interest of mine, and that's the notion of wicked problems and the challenges of educating for the future. So I've been worrying about this question for many years, and I'm not the only one. So we all know the wonderful vision statements in the front of our New Zealand curriculum that say what we hope that our learners will be and become. But the question of the future that we imagine these young people will need to employ and apply these attributes is less often addressed. Because we can't see the future and we have no data from the future, most of the time we end up leaving the future to its own devices. In other words, we don't seriously engage with it as an educational question. Now, I've been hugely influenced by this author from the UK, Kerry Facer, and her book Learning Futures really helped me to come to some new understandings and ways of thinking about the role of schools in relation to the future. And she talks about the need for schools to see themselves in the business not of future-proofing young people, but in actually future building. She calls on schools to resist some of the dominant ideas about what the future of learning is or could be, and instead to take an active role in helping to design and shape that future. And we featured a question and answer with Kerry Facer in our recent special issue of SET on futures education. and that's actually also a free to download online link. Karen, you might be able to post the link in there. So I really recommend reading that. And Karen also wrote a book review about this book, Learning Futures, which is in that special issue. So if you want to explore Kerry's ideas in more depth, the Q&A is a really great place to start. But coming back to our book, this idea of wicked problems, this is the idea that provided the link from thinking about key competencies and all of their facets and complexity and conceptions around the future and the kinds of challenges that we think that people will be able to, will need these key competencies in order to be able to engage with. So if you haven't already read our book or you haven't come across the term wicked problems, these are complex, value-laden, multi-dimensional problems that we all know are part of our realities today and are likely to be challenges for the world through to the foreseeable future. And the literature on wicked problems explains why they're so difficult to address, because they can't just be broken down into their component pieces and solved bit by bit. And they can't just be solved by drawing on individual disciplinary knowledge. And they're not the kinds of problems that schooling has traditionally set us up to be able to solve. So our book takes wicked problems as the frame for our exploration of the connection between key competencies in the future. And the process that we used in our writing was literally, we looked through newspapers and we grabbed issues from the headlines that represented some of these wicked problems. And we worked backwards thinking about what are the dimensions of this problem and what are the capabilities that people may need to develop in order to be able to engage productively with them. And then we worked backwards to thinking about what can that look like in a school or a classroom. And so by grabbing our wicked problems from the headlines and trying to think our way through them and connect them to what we know, we hoped we could model a thinking process that other people might see themselves using as well. And so we're really interested in hearing readers' responses to that. And we've also picked up a few blogs and Twitters from some teachers out there who actually are starting to explore wicked problems as a frame for some of their classroom practice. So that's pretty exciting. So I won't say too much more about these ideas because we'll be discussing them over the next few weeks, but I just wanted to put up some comments that I've collected over the last few years from teachers and from school leaders when we've been discussing these challenges of how we think about our roles and responsibilities as educators in relation to the future. And I think it's really important that we're able to surface some of these really difficult questions and challenges that we face and also address some of the positive and negative feelings that come along with those, and to recognize that these are the kinds of questions that we all need to be able to feel comfortable sharing and exploring together. So I'm just wondering if people, if these resonate with anyone. So that's just a brief overview of probably the biggest and kind of most mind-stretching aspect of our book and how we've tried to approach our thinking about key competencies. And if you haven't read the book, here's where those ideas are most evident. So chapter 2, we talk about that futures thinking process, and then chapters 3 to 6, each one has a wicked problem ranging from climate change to social equality, and each chapter kind of works backwards from that wicked problem through to looking at practices in schools. including stories from New Zealand schools and classrooms. And Chapter 7 addresses that gnarly question of what competencies we think we will need if we want to take on the challenge of being future-oriented educators. And as I said, we've been looking out for reader responses, and here's a couple of blogs that I really recommend following up to see what teachers are thinking and some of the things that they've been doing in their class in relation to the ideas. And that's it from me. I'm going to hand on to Sally now, who's going to talk about the second big idea.
Thanks, Rachel. Can you all hear me? I hope so. I'm going to talk about the key idea 2, which is about key competencies for citizenship. And one of the things that we did when we first started writing this book is we wanted to update ourselves about what the international literature was saying about the key competencies. So we did a literature search and started to read some of the literature that's coming from Europe. And what we saw in that literature, there was 2 threads that were evident about the purposes or sort of end goals, I guess, for competency development. And one of them, which was the most common thread, was about, it was sort of a vocational or job skills focus. And the idea was the key competencies, you develop young people's key competencies in order that they can have a successful life and function in society. And the second narrative that wasn't so evident was a social justice narrative. And this was about learners developing the capabilities needing to contribute to a decent life for all. And if you think about that wicked problem framing, a decent life for all is really important because we've all actually got to work together to address wicked problems. So this idea really captured us as a group. We were really interested in what learning experiences might look like if our end goal was a decent life for all as opposed to a successful life, because that's quite a different framing. And so if you think about how we position students if we're thinking about those ideas, there's 2 different ways that we can think about students. And one is, are they citizens now, which is that means that they're people who can take an active place in shaping their world and working together to create social change in their environment. And another view is that students are citizens in preparation, and I guess you're familiar with this view of students. That is that we're teaching them in a school environment all the skills and capabilities they'll need so that in the future that they can take their role as citizens, but they're not necessarily citizens at this point in time. And those are 2 quite different framings. The second one is citizens in preparation. It sort of links back to that model of where filling people with lots of stuff so they can use it later as opposed to using it now. But if you think about those 2 different framings, they all have a really big implications for what we do with the curriculum, what sort of learning opportunities we design, how we think about students, and also what the key competencies might look like. So we're in a very lucky position in some ways in our role as researchers because we get to visit schools to hear about all the exciting things that they were doing. And one of the other reasons why we really wanted to write this book is we wanted to draw together a lot of the projects that we've been working on, because one strand of our work, I guess, is that we go into schools that are sort of doing cutting edge innovations and sort of document some of the things that they're doing. And it's really exciting for us because we get to see all these different things happening across New Zealand. But one thing that we find quite frustrating is we see all these little pockets of things happening in different places, and we could see quite a lot of similar ideas in these different projects and what people were doing, but we didn't have a place to bring them together. So in some ways writing this book was one way that we wanted to bring in those stories into the mix and also honour those stories and all the information that people had so willingly shared with us. So one thing that we did notice when we go and look at the schools that are doing really innovative things is they often have that positioning of students that they're active citizens now. And one way that they do that is by creating projects for students to do things that make a real difference to their world. So they might be working on environmental projects or sort of health promotion activities, they're actually creating change in their environment. And there's lots of examples sort of peppered throughout the book of these sorts of experiences. The cover shows a picture of the wharf at Tolaga Bay, and one of the stories in the book is about a group of students, teachers, scientists and local iwi who are working together on, I guess, an environmental project to sustain the local water catchment area. So that's just one example, but there's examples throughout the whole book about how people are working together to create change. And one of the things we've noticed when we've been in schools and see these projects in action is how meaningful they can be for students and how they just really capture their interest, because that whole idea that you can actually be someone who can create change is really energizing for people, and it's quite fantastic to see what people can do. And it's also fantastic to see the range of competencies that young people can develop. And we often talk to teachers who were saying things like, I was so surprised at all these amazing things that students could do. So for us, we wanted to bring that sort of sense of excitement and engagement into the book. But one of the other things that we notice when we're visiting schools is we can see that that there's a lot of projects that really involve people working collectively, and this is quite a challenge for our education system because we're quite used to sort of the individual models. And if you think about assessment practices as we go up schools, assessment practices can be very individual. So that idea of people working collectively to do something real in their environment is quite a challenge to the whole sort of structure and systems of schools. And so for us, I guess we want to think about, how can we embed this idea more in how we're working? I mean, there's lots of possibilities. New Zealand Curriculum offers us many opportunities to engage in these sorts of projects, or for students to do these sorts of projects. Obvious areas are sort of the health promotion area in the health and PE curriculum and environmental education, but there's lots of opportunities in all curriculum areas if people want to go out and grab them. So one of the things that we were interested in thinking about is what are the key competencies that young people might need to develop if they're going to be change agents and create social change? And one thing that I was really interested in when I was reading the literature was in views of agency. Like agency is often seen as an individual thing where it's something that some people develop so that they are able to take charge of their own world and create a life for themselves. But I was interested in that idea that agency is needed for people to engage collectively and work together. It's a platform from which you can work together to create change. And I guess at the heart of that is participating and contributing, but participating and contributing is a lot more than just working in groups and joining groups. It's about being an active member of a community and working to create new communities. And so there are many, many capabilities that you need to work in that way. So I guess we're really interested in hearing about how people are developing those capabilities in young people and the sorts of things that they're doing. Another thing that's really important is sort of thinking ethically and critically about social issues and social justice. If you think all the wicked problems, there's many different solutions to wicked problems, and some people and groups are advantaged or disadvantaged by those different solutions. So we really need ways to surface those different solutions, get people thinking about them and talking about them, and balancing the needs and rights of different groups. And that is a very skilled task. So I guess we're also wanting to think about, what do the key competencies look like for young people if they're going to be able to develop those skills and working together and examining and exploring and thinking critically about issues before they take action. So I guess my hope in some ways for the book and for the key competencies is for us to think about, well, how can we get some of these ideas more at the heart of curriculum planning? Sometimes when we're visiting schools, we see passionate teachers doing really amazing things, and what they're doing seems to be located a bit on the fringe of the mainstream curriculum program, not at the heart. I guess my wish is to see it more as an embedded part of how schools operate and how the curriculum is planned and designed. So I'm really interested in hearing the sorts of things that that people have been doing and working out there, I guess, to bring that idea of students as citizens now, like right to the forefront of how we think about education. Anyway, that's my bit, so I might just hand over to you now, Sue, to talk about idea number 3.
Thanks, Sally. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm sorry I sound a bit croaky. I'm addressing key idea 3, which is thinking about diversity in its broadest sense. And this is an idea that's always interested me. As I said at the front of the book in our section, which we called On the Soapbox, I used to think that teaching for diversity meant making space in my classroom for the ideas and experiences of all of my children. But I never really provided opportunities for those diverse ideas and experiences to bump up against each other, or for us to use the diversity of ideas in our classroom to help us solve our problems of understanding or to create new ideas. I didn't, as Rose would say, I didn't put the diversity to work. In the field of multiliteracies, there's an academic called J.Lo Bianco who talks about the failure to recognise the literacies of minority or Indigenous students is squandered bilingualism, because it's a failure to use students who are bilingual. It's a failure to use their capacity to critique the way we talk that comes from their bilingual skills. And in the same way, I think that a failure to draw upon the diversity of the ideas of our students is also a kind of a squandering. It's a failure to use a rich resource that we have right at our fingertips. People often talk about coping with diversity or catering for diversity or even making space for diversity. And what we're interested in is how we use diversity as the rich resource that it is. So Rachel talked earlier about how wicked problems are so difficult to address because they span multiple domains. They can't be solved just by drawing on the tools and ideas of one discipline or one organisation or one group. And they're problems that are understood differently depending upon your worldview. So people working in this area argue that we can only come up with clumsy solutions, and that we can only come up with these solutions by drawing together quite different ideas from different worldviews and different disciplines. So our young people therefore need to know how to learn these new discourses. They need to learn how to transform discourses.
Just wondering there if we've got a slight technical issue there. It looks like we might just have slightly lost Sue there. Can everyone else hear me okay? Can I just get a yep, okay, all right. An exciting pause, but that's okay. We can just take a pause there for a second. Just while they're sorting themselves out, there have been some really great comments coming through in the chat. And just while I'm letting Sally and Sue just sort themselves out for a second, I'm just going to ask whether folk in the room have a question or a comment that they would like to make. There's been some great stories being shared, and I'm just wondering whether, just while they're sorting themselves out, whether there's any particular questions or comments that that people want to make. For example, there's been a couple of great stories shared from Barry down in Christchurch, who's basically learned.
Is my mic on?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I'm just wrapping back to you. I was just saying, Sue, just while you were getting reconnected, that there's been some stories shared in the chat from Learns about examples of students taking collective action in their local environment, and Ray has also shared a story there around a project around a riverside down in Christchurch as well. And so these are the kind of stories that I know are threaded through the book, and it would be great to come back to some of those examples either later in this session, or when we come into the ongoing discussions in the VLN. But just so that we don't
I'm
break,
good to go.
that's fantastic. Just so we don't break the flow of that particular part of the presentation, I'm going to hand back the microphone to you, Sue, so you can just finish sharing with us your thoughts around harnessing the diversity of the students that we have with us. Over to you, Sue, even though you're called Sally.
Thank you. I've just switched offices. I'm now in Sally's office. I'm not quite sure at which point I dropped out. Had I started talking about BNCO's failure to recognise the literacies of bilingual students bit? I had done that. Cool. So let's just go from the slide we're at now, which and what I was going on to say was that as teachers, we need to provide students with opportunities to develop these capabilities to learn new discourses and transform discourses, the capabilities to have empathy and work in the shoes of others, and the capacity to know yourself, your own identity and your own discourses if you're to do these things. Now the slide that I want, I'm just going to move it along with Sally's computer, which I'm just getting sorted. We don't seem to be onto my last slide. Okay. Oh, because you're a left-sided click person.
I can move it for you. There we go.
No, that's okay. There we go. We're there. Okay. So we want to provide students with these opportunities to build the capacity for empathy and to learn new discourses and to build knowledge from diversity. Then there are certain conditions that we can help set up in our classroom, and I've drawn here from complexity thinking, and these are an adapted version of what Brett Davis and Dennis Samara talk about as the conditions of complex emergence. They say that when these conditions are present, there's opportunity for new knowledge or new ideas to emerge. One of these is tasks with enabling constraints. So that is tasks that in which there is a lot of freedom, but not so much freedom that creativity is stifled. So there are some constraints. They need to be tasks that are done in groups containing diversity. So that might involve groups of students of different ages or students from different backgrounds. There also needs to be opportunity for diverse ideas to collide. It's not enough just to have a group of students working together. There needs to be structured into the task opportunity for diverse ideas to bump against each other and for new ideas to go out of that collision. There needs to be systems for recording ideas and their evolution over time, and there needs to be opportunities to revisit ideas over time. And we provided in the book some examples of that we'd seen in recent research where we felt that some or many of these conditions were present with tasks that were open-ended and those other conditions. However, these examples came from other projects that didn't have this as their main focus, and I'm really interested in what might happen if teachers consciously set up these conditions. And I'd be interested in we would all be interested in hearing from you if you've tried any of these things in your classroom, if you have any stories to share with us. So that brings me to the end of my part of the webinar, and maybe if I hand back to you, Karen, have you got some further things you would like to say?
First of all, I'd like to thank Sally and Sue and Rachel for giving us that sneak peek into 2 or 3 of the key ideas that are woven in separate chapters through the book, and to also say thank you, Sally and Sue, for so effortlessly juggling that slight technical hitch. These things inevitably happen to all of us, so thank you for managing that so smoothly. There's been some great discussion coming through in the chat. People sharing a number of examples about how practice might give effect to some of these ideas. And I'm going to ask people, I've got a couple of questions of my own that I've jotted down here, but no doubt there will also be questions in the room, and we have a few minutes now where we could actually either take a question or questions from the room, or if people have examples of stories that they think give effect to some of these ideas, it'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about them. So just while I'm actually Reed, is Reed still in the room? Because it would be Reed, I'm not going to spring the microphone straight on you. Brilliant. Or maybe I will. Just wondering, Rachel gave you a bit of a shout out, and your blog, link to your blog has been shared in the session today. Just wondering whether you might be able to just say just a little bit, if you'd be happy to turn your mic on at the top of the screen, whether you'd be happy to talk a little bit about what you're doing in your school. Would you be happy to do that? Just want to grab the mic and just tell us briefly what you've been blogging about, Reed. Just wondering if you're able to turn your mic on so it goes green and connect your mic. Oh, no sound. And yet he's here. That's all right. It is green, it's not working. Sometimes if we come in through Chrome, if we jump in and out and come back in through Safari, that works, but I'm also very aware of the time. But maybe you'll be able to give us a wee summary in the chat or part of the online discussions, and I've seen that Tessa is probably going to grab you for another session at another time. We certainly, it might be good, Tessa, to talk about the second webinar that closes this book group, and seeing if we can get Steve and Reed and a couple of other teachers to be part of that session to share their stories. I do have a question, and I don't know whether Sally or Sue or Rachel want to field this question. One of the things that has come through in the discussions, and also kind of forefront in my mind, is gosh, is where to start. I mean, clearly some teachers have started thinking about redesigning learning that picks up on some of the themes in the book, and they're blogging about it. And there's always that comment about not having enough time, and the key competencies being so broad. You know, where might teachers, how might teachers begin? Do you start by thinking, well, I might have another look at a learning program that's coming up? Do you start by looking at one key competency and foregrounding that? Do you start with a wicked problem? On a very practical basis, you know, where might a teacher begin? And I don't know who would like to take that question. First hand up from NZCER can grab the mic. Bit of advice for a teacher about. Go on then, Sue, over to you. Can you are you able to turn your mic on? I can't hear you. Just check that your microphone is activated. It just needs clicking so the little line disappears.
Yes, we've done that. Sorry about that. So I think this is my personal view, but the others may like to chip in as well. I think that you start with a problem. It could be a wicked problem, or it could be a smaller scale problem. Like, for example, one of the examples in the chapter on diversity looked at some children addressing the question, is Cinderella's father to blame for her predicament? A question about a picture book they were reading that had those enabling constraints I talked about earlier. There was no right answer to the question, and the answer might differ depending on the way you looked at the world. Alternatively, you might want to start with a much bigger question. Another example was, should we keep the Treaty of
Waitangi Day is our national holiday, which was addressed with older students. We wouldn't suggest starting with just one competency at a time, because our idea is that, or not everyone's idea, not just our idea, is that the competencies worked together, and that each is necessary but not sufficient in engaging in this sort of problem solving. That's me. That's my bit done.
Yeah, and I would
Rachel or
add,
Sally wanted to add. Sorry, go Rachel.
I'm not. Oh, I'm getting sort of an echoey sound. I hope I sound okay to you. We've seen examples of schools who have gone about it with one key competency, starting with, say, participating and contributing, and as a school spending, a term or even a year unpacking this idea and thinking about it across the school curriculum. And I think somebody asked a question there of what does it mean for a year 10 maths teacher or a year 12 music teacher. I think these ideas are bigger than just any single discipline or classroom or year level approach. We need to actually be able to think and have conversations with our colleagues to think across, the whole picture of learning in our schools. What are we doing to create the opportunities for students to grow and develop and express these complex interconnected capabilities throughout their learning. So I think they're not just about tinkering around the edges of how our existing curriculum and practice is. It's actually about finding ways, and in a way I always think, if you don't know where to start, just start somewhere. And if the somewhere for you is starting with one of the key competencies and spending some time drilling down and unpacking it and reading about it and looking at what other people are doing and having conversations, you're inevitably going to bump up against these other ideas and the integrative nature of the competencies. So I think if you go into it with that understanding that it's not a quick, easily addressed thing that you can, identify, well, how do we do it and how do we do it right and how do we know that we're doing it right? If you go into it with that broader understanding, then it's about just starting somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's really kind of helpful and almost comforting, really. I think in some ways that the ideas are so broad, it's hard to know what to get a handle on. And I'm actually just going to, there's some nice comments coming through the bottom here, comments about how you might start with cross-curricular, a couple of examples there about people starting with quite discrete cross-curricular projects as a starting point to beginning to explore the ideas. I'm just wondering whether your microphone, we might just give it one more shot with your mic. Reed, do you want to just see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Awesome, yeah. Fantastic, welcome. Just
Okay.
briefly, I'm just keeping a wee eye on the time. Just can you tell us a wee bit about what you've been blogging about?
When I first read the book, obviously resonated with me quite a lot. Our school, in doing our curriculum planning, we tend to be quite reactive to what the kids are doing, and of course that isn't the intention of the New Zealand curriculum. And so, knowing where we were going this term, they wanted to look at culture and look at the diversity of our culture, and that's fantastic. But if I apply the lens of trying to future-proof our kids, or looking at this in a future-focused way, I really wanted to make them think a little bit more and challenge themselves. And culture is I think, is going to allow us to do that. So the idea of taking a classroom which has, amongst my 30 children, I think close to 16 different ethnic groups, if I challenge them to look at what our culture will look like in 10 years, I think it's going to be far more, I'm sure that's opening them up to far more learning, and it's going to allow for student voice, the diversity. We will come up with clumsy solutions, I'm sure. So that's kind of the journey I'm about to start. And I must say, even the way that the chapters were set up in the Key Competencies book, with the idea of these media headlines, is something that I'm trying to replicate, thanks to that wonderful episode that Paul Henry promoted a couple of years ago, in terms of what actually is a New Zealander at the moment. So yeah, that's me. So I'd be happy to answer any questions from you guys, or if you've got wonderings about what I'm up to.
Hey Reid, one of that's fantastic, and it's what's really exciting is being able to balance the book and the ideas
Oh,
with the stories of these things.
yeah,
Oh, can you hear?
that
Yep.
would be me.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Can you hear me okay now? Great. It's really exciting hearing about the ideas in the book, and also then balancing it with stories of practice, because there isn't like a right answer or a model that we can just pick up and plonk into a classroom and say, hey, we're doing the key competencies, or hey, I'm doing future focused learning today. It's an evolving approach to pedagogy, to curriculum design, and I think, I mean, I really like that. I don't know, you're not going to be able to see this at the beginning of each chapter. If I hold this up, there are headlines here that are taken from the media, which are kind of kicking off points for different wicked problems, which then become that doorway into exploring particular learning areas, and the key competencies kind of thread through, and each of the chapters has got examples of teachers trying to explore what this looks like in practice, knowing that there isn't a right answer, and so there's an element of risk, reflection, critique, inquiry, review that goes on here, which is why blogs from Reid, and I thank you for your contribution this afternoon, from Steve, and from, I'm sure, other people in the room who are doing the same kind of thing. Those blog stories are so important and vital. And really, that's, Reid, you extended an open invitation to connect with you, to find out more about what you're doing. And equally, I'm sure there are people in the room or people watching this recording who would love to talk with you and to talk more with the authors about some of these ideas. And we would also love to hear about examples that are being explored and tried, and kind of things that are a bit crunchy, but people are beginning to think about them in their schools over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so the online discussion will be happening in the VLN. It's been set up as part of the Connected Educator group in the VLN network. There's a link down at the bottom right hand corner in the web link box, and I'm just going to put that in here as well. And we're going to be focusing, and I just want to double check this with Sally, Rachel and Sue, focusing on a theme per week. I think we decided. And do one of you just want to mention what the first theme is going to be that we will invite people to explore from today in the VLN?
I think we're doing them in the order we presented. So the first one was the wicked problems and the challenges of educating for the future. And then the citizenship theme, and then the working with diverse ideas and others.
Okay, so there's the challenge then. Maybe wicked problems and how we tackle them is a wicked problem in itself. We could disappear down a wicked problem rabbit hole there, but that's the challenge for us this week. Next week, I'm aware that some people might be busy at ULearn, but equally some people will be busy at home or thinking about their own professional learning. So really, and the online discussion doesn't have a time lid on it. It's persistent and we can drop in and out. So kicking off with a focus around tackling wicked problems and what that might look like. I know some people have used that as a springboard into designing projects and programs in their schools. So we want to hear about it, and we want to debate and discuss it over the next week. You can buy the book at ULearn. I'm not sure about that, but certainly NZCER, the link is in our book group page, which will take you to the book page on the NZCER website. and you can certainly grab it from there as well. It's 1 o'clock. So I would like to extend a huge thank you and a paki to Sally and Sue and Rachel. Thank you for persisting through technical gremlins and colds and coughs and all kinds of things and office moving. It's been hugely appreciated to get this journey kick-started. It's a wonderful use of digital connections to bring us together for some gentle, challenging debate and discussion. After all, that's what we need to be pointing all of this connection stuff at, is really thinking about how we can evolve our practice in ways that are really pointing towards rich curriculum design. So we'll see you all in the VLN over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Keep yourselves in touch with the newsletters as well, and keep on top with what's going on there. And we will hopefully see some of you back here for a revisit and an exploration of some of the key ideas that come through in the VLN on the 23rd of October. So that's the screenshot from the discussion page in the VLN, and the link is down in the web link box at the bottom right. Just a quick mention that we do have a second book group kicking off, not for a little while, but 21st of October with Ewan Macintosh. So if you're interested, or you know a colleague who might be in exactly the same format, webinar, discussion, and another webinar, completely different topic, but might be of interest for leaders, particularly around strategic innovation and program design as well. The evaluation form link is in the bottom of the screen. I'd love a 30 seconds if you just go straight away there now and just give us some feedback on the session. We would all really appreciate that. That would just be fantastic. And I'd like to wrap up with our karakia this afternoon. Just a reminder though, really these sessions are really all about our learners and about reimagining how we can evolve the New Zealand curriculum. We're very, very lucky. We've got a huge amount of space, I think, to play and imagine. And there are lots of other countries that don't have anywhere near as much scope for redefining learning that can be wrapped around the learners that we have in our classrooms and in our schools every day. So let's really make the most of that and seize that opportunity and take the next 3 weeks to imagine what that might look like. So kia ora. Thank you very much all of you for being here today. Ka whakaaerea te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, huye tākie. Thanks very much everyone.